The televised confrontation, a narrative account of the high-stakes debate. Ilhan Omar made her entrance into the brightly lit Fox News studio, carrying with her the metaphorical shield she had utilized effectively for years, a defense mechanism that involved vocalizing accusations of Islamophobia and subsequently observing as her detractors retreated in hesitation. Donald Trump, however, viewed a congresswoman who had potentially entered into a marital union with her own brother for the purposes of immigration fraud, had directed millions of dollars to her husband's consulting firm, had referred to the events of September 11th with the phrase, "Some people did something," and had reportedly instructed Somalis in Somalia to ask her which country she truly represented. The shield she relied upon was on the verge of shattering on live national television. Fox News had organized what they were billing as a definitive forum on immigration and identity, centering specifically on the Ilhan Omar controversy, promising a direct confrontation regarding the most explosive allegations in modern congressional history. For years, numerous questions had swirled around Ilhan Omar, specifically asking whether she had married her brother to commit immigration fraud, why she appeared to minimize the tragedy of 9/11, why she allegedly spread anti-Semitic tropes, which led her own party to condemn her twice, why her campaign paid her husband's company nearly $3 million, and why she seemed to prioritize Somalia's interests ahead of America's. The mainstream media had largely avoided these probing questions, frequently dismissing them as conspiracy theories or instances of Islamophobia. Any journalist who attempted to investigate these matters was immediately attacked and labeled as intolerant. Omar herself had perfected a specific defense strategy, which was to label any criticism as racism or religious bigotry, refuse to answer direct questions, and rely on her progressive allies to provide protection. That strategy had worked effectively when reporters were afraid to push back. But it was not going to work against Donald Trump. For 3 weeks leading up to this event, Trump had been working closely with a team of investigators, former federal prosecutors, immigration attorneys, and opposition researchers to meticulously compile every single piece of evidence regarding Omar's alleged fraud and misconduct. The dossier included marriage certificates from Minnesota showing her union to Ahmed Noor, Said Elmi, family photographs from Somalia showing Omar and Elmi as children in the same household, and school records listing them with the same parents. It also included social media posts from family members calling Elmi her brother before the posts were hurriedly deleted. Tax records showing she filed jointly with Ahmed Hirsi while still legally married to Elmi, and Minnesota Campaign Finance Board records documenting her significant fine. Furthermore, the evidence included Federal Election Commission complaints about the massive payments to her husband, Tim Mynette's company. Video footage of her "Some People Did Something" speech regarding 9/11, her controversial tweets that the House condemned twice, and footage from Somalia, where she told a crowd to ask what country we are from. All of this information was organized in folders, prepared for display on Fox's massive high-definition screens, and designed to force Omar to answer questions she had dodged for years. The anticipated outcome of what would happen when a president who actually enforced immigration law confronted someone accused of immigration fraud promised to expose the biggest cover-up in congressional history, and the Islamophobia shield was not going to save her this time. If the public had ever wanted to see Trump ask Omar directly about marrying her brother for a green card with the marriage certificates displayed on screen, this was the moment. The audience was advised to wait until he played her Somalia speech at minute 39, where she literally told Somalis that she is Somali first. The Fox News studio was packed beyond its standard capacity with 550 people, marking the network's largest audience setup ever recorded. The crowd was overwhelmingly pro-Trump, with a small section of Omar supporters who had made the trip to support her looking visibly uncomfortable in such deeply hostile territory. Security measures were significantly heightened, given the controversial nature of the debate, and the tension in the room was palpable to everyone present. The stage design was intentionally confrontational, featuring two podiums angled sharply toward each other, massive HD screens ready to display evidence, and Brett Baier, at the moderator's desk, looking like a man who knew he was about to moderate the most explosive political confrontation in modern television history. Ilhan Omar walked out first to cheers from her small section and immediate loud boos from the Trump crowd. She wore a hijab and a dark suit, carrying herself with the defiant confidence of someone who had weathered controversy before, and looking prepared to deploy her standard defense that any criticism is Islamophobia, any questions are racism, and any evidence is fabricated by bigots. She seemingly thought her identity would protect her, that accusations of bigotry would shut down the inquiry, and that Fox would be intimidated by potential accusations of religious discrimination. She had catastrophically misjudged Donald Trump. Donald Trump walked out 2 minutes later to a roar that lasted over 4 minutes, the applause, cheers, and chants deafening as calls of his name mixed with chants of USA and demands to investigate Omar. Brett Baier had to ask repeatedly for quiet as Trump wore his signature dark suit and red tie, waving to the crowd with those sweeping gestures, and walking to his podium carrying multiple thick folders, which he set down with deliberate heaviness. Omar's confident expression wavered noticeably when she saw the folders, knowing that Trump, with prepared evidence, was never good news. Brett Baier began his introduction about the serious nature of the allegations and the importance of addressing them directly, reminding everyone to keep the discussion factual and substantive, a reminder that would last approximately 60 seconds. "Congresswoman Omar, your opening statement," Baier announced. Omar began in her distinctive accent, immediately going on the offense by stating, "Thank you, Brett. I am here tonight because certain people refuse to accept that a Muslim refugee woman can be in Congress. The allegations against me are lies spread by Islamophobes and racists who cannot accept that someone like me, a black Muslim woman, can represent Americans." She turned to face Trump directly and continued, "President Trump has spent years demonizing Muslims, refugees, and immigrants. He has spread lies about me because I dare to speak truth to power, but I will not be silenced by racism and bigotry." Her supporters applauded as she sat back, thinking she had established the moral high ground. Trump looked at her with an expression hovering between contempt and anticipation. When he spoke, his Queen's accent was thick with sarcasm as he asked, "Ilhan, can I call you Ilhan? Let's talk about immigration fraud, specifically yours." He opened his first folder and pulled out documents, stating, "When you built your career on immigration sob stories, you better not have committed immigration fraud yourself." Trump didn't wait for her to respond. He was already displaying documents on the massive screens. "You came to America as a refugee from Somalia in 1995, correct?" Trump asked. Omar tried to control the narrative by responding, "My family fled violence." But Trump cut in. "I asked a simple question. You came here as a refugee, yes or no?" After a pause, she replied, "Yes." Trump continued, "America gave you safety, opportunity, citizenship, even elected you to Congress, correct?" She answered, "Yes." Trump nodded, saying, "Good. Now, let's talk about Ahmed Nur Said Elmi." Omar's face went pale, as she knew exactly where this line of questioning was going. Trump displayed the marriage certificate on the screens, reading aloud, "Ilhan Omar married Ahmed Nur Said Elmi, February 12, 2009, Minneapolis, Minnesota. You married Ahmed Elmi in February 2009. Yes." or no? Omar's attorneys had prepped her for this, so she replied, "My personal marital history is—" But Trump interrupted, his voice booming through the studio. "Yes or no? It's a public record." She couldn't deny a public marriage record, so she whispered, "Yes." Trump continued, "Thank you. Now, who is Ahmed Noor Said Elmi? He was someone I was married to. Is he your brother?" The question hung in the air, causing the studio to go completely silent. Omar's face flushed as she retorted, "That is a disgusting smear." Trump countered, "I didn't ask if it's a smear. I asked if he's your brother. Yes or no?" She replied, "I will not dignify that." Trump shot back, "That's not a denial. Is he your brother?" Omar refused to answer directly, instead launching into a prepared speech about Islamophobia. But Trump cut her off. "Let me show you why people think he's your brother," he said, displaying photos on the screens showing young Omar and Elmi as children clearly in the same household. In a family setting, these are photos from Somalia. You and Elmi, as children, same house, same family. Look like brother and sister to you. He pulled out more evidence, specifically school records from Somalia, listing both of them with the same parents, same mother, same father, with both of their names on school enrollment documents with identical parent information. The documents appeared on the screen with highlighted sections showing the matching parent names. He also displayed social media posts from family members before they were deleted, calling Elmi her brother. Your own family members calling him your brother on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all deleted once the allegations surfaced, Trump noted, showing archived social media screenshots with the word brother highlighted. Trump walked toward center stage, building his case as he said, "Let me explain what investigators believe happened, because the evidence is pretty clear." He laid out the timeline on the screens. 2002, Ahmed Noor said Elmi comes to America, needs immigration status. 2009, you marry him. You're already a U.S. citizen. 2009 to 2017, he gets a green card, a path to citizenship through marriage to you. 2012 to 2015, you file joint tax returns with Ahmed Hirsi while still legally married to Elmi. 2017, you divorce Elmi after he's established immigration status. 2018, you legally marry Hirsi, who you'd been with all along. That's immigration fraud. Marrying someone to get them a green card. That's a federal crime. Omar tried to interrupt, but Trump spoke over her, adding, "And here's the kicker. While you were legally married to Elmi, you were filing joint tax returns with Ahmed Hirsi, two husbands at the same time, for tax purposes." He displayed the tax filing records and noted, "The Minnesota Campaign Finance Board fined you $3,469 for violations related to this. You paid the fine. That's an admission." He showed the fine documentation. Trump turned back to face her directly and asked, "So let me ask you again, very directly on national television with millions watching. Is Ahmed Noor Said Elmi your brother?" Omar refused to answer, repeating her claims about Islamophobia. Trump responded, "Your silence speaks volumes. If he's not your brother, just say so. If these school records are wrong, explain how. If these family photos aren't what they look like, clarify. But you won't, because you can't." Trump's voice rose as he concluded this segment. "You came here as a refugee. America gave you everything. Safety from Somalia's chaos, citizenship, opportunity. You became a United States Congresswoman. And you possibly committed immigration fraud to bring your brother here. You possibly lied to get him status. You possibly broke federal law. And now you refuse to answer basic questions about it and call everyone who asks a racist?" His final line was delivered with maximum force. That's not Islamophobia. That's evidence you refuse to address. That's questions you won't answer. That's documents you can't explain. If you're innocent, prove it. But you won't. And we all know why. The audience erupted in chants of "lock her up," filling the studio. Trump grabbed his next folder immediately, not giving Omar time to recover. Now let's talk about 9/11, because you said something about it that I'll never forget. And I was there, he said, queuing up video on the screens. Never minimize mass murder in front of a New Yorker who watched the towers fall. This is you, March 2019, speaking at a CARE event in Los Angeles. Let's watch. The video played Omar speaking, saying, CARE was founded after 9/11 because they recognized that some people did something and that all of us were starting to lose access to our civil liberties. Trump let the clip end, then turned to the audience with exaggerated disbelief, repeating, "Some people did something." That's how she described 9/11. Some people did something. He pulled out printed lists of names and said, "Let me tell you what some people did. They hijacked 4 commercial airplanes. They murdered 2,977 Americans. They flew planes into the Twin Towers in my city. They hit the Pentagon. They would have hit the Capitol if brave passengers on Flight 93 hadn't fought back." Trump's voice became harder as he continued, "I watched those towers fall. I went to Ground Zero. I saw the devastation. I knew people who died. This wasn't, some people did something. This was the worst terrorist attack on American soil in history." He displayed photos on the screens of the burning towers, people jumping, the collapse, and the aftermath. These are the people who did something. Ilhan, regular Americans going to work, office workers, first responders, firefighters who ran into collapsing buildings, police officers, regular people just trying to survive. He pulled out the list of names again and read, Gordon Amoth Jr., Edelmiro Abad, Marie Rose Abad, Andrew Anthony Abate, Vincent Abate. These are just the first 5 names alphabetically. 2,977 names total. 2,977 Americans murdered. Trump walked toward her podium and said, "And you called it, some people did something like it was a fender bender, like it was a parking violation. Some people did something." Omar tried to defend herself, saying, "That comment was taken out of context." Trump shouted back, "There is no context that makes that okay. You can't properly honor 2,977 murdered Americans. You can't call it what it was. Terrorism." He showed more of her statement, adding, "And you didn't apologize. You defended it. You said people were misunderstanding you. You doubled down on it." Trump's voice dripped with contempt as he said, "America gave you refuge when Somalia failed you, gave you safety, citizenship, elected you to Congress, and you can't even properly honor Americans murdered on September 11th. You minimize their deaths as some people did something to make a point about Muslim civil rights." He shook his head in disgust and continued, "I was in New York on September 11th. I saw the smoke. I heard the sirens. I watched the towers collapse on TV like everyone else. But I was there in the city. Those weren't some people doing something. Those were Al-Qaeda terrorists murdering Americans in an act of war." His final assessment was brutal. "You came to America from a country that couldn't protect you. America protected you. And you show such contempt for American victims that you can't even describe their murder accurately. That's not cultural difference. That's disrespect. That's contempt. And it's disqualifying for someone who swore an oath to represent Americans." Trump moved immediately to his next attack, pulling out printed tweets. "Now, let's talk about your problem with Jews. And don't start with the criticism of Israel defense. We're talking about anti-Semitism. When even Democrats condemn your anti-Semitism twice, you know it's bad. Trump displayed her tweets on the screens, one by one. February 2019. Someone asks you about pro-Israel support in Congress. You tweet, "It's all about the Benjamin's baby," with a money bag emoji. He showed the tweet in giant font. You're saying Jews buy political support, that Jews control politics with money. That's a classic anti-Semitic trope. Jews secretly controlling things with money. That's Nazi propaganda. Ilhan Omar tried to interrupt. "I was talking about AIPAC." Trump retorted, "You said it's all about the Benjamins, about money, about Jews using money to control politics. That's anti-Semitism." He pulled out another tweet from November 2012, reading, "Israel has hypnotized the world. May Allah awaken the people and help them see the evil doings of Israel." Trump read it slowly, letting each word land. Hypnotized the world. Another classic anti-Semitic trope. Jews have mystical powers. Jews hypnotize people. That's literally from the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, one of the most anti-Semitic texts ever written. He displayed more tweets showing her comparing Israel to Nazi Germany. You compared Jews to Nazis, the people who murdered 6 million Jews in the Holocaust. You compared them to their own murderers. Trump pulled out official congressional documents and stated, "And you know what happened? Your own party was so embarrassed, they passed a resolution. H.R. Res. 183. March 2019. The House of Representatives passed a resolution condemning anti-Semitism because of your tweets." He showed the resolution on screen. Your own Democrats, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, they condemned you. They were so embarrassed by your Jew hatred that they had to pass a resolution. He wasn't done, adding, "And then it happened again." H. Res. 241, July 2019. Another resolution. Your own party condemned you twice for anti-Semitism. The evidence appeared on screen, both resolutions with vote tallies. Trump walked toward her, saying, "Let me explain something to you. Jews fled persecution and came to America just like you fled Somalia. America gave them safety and opportunity, just like it gave you safety and opportunity." His voice became harder as he continued. "And you spread anti-Semitic tropes about them. You say they control politics with money. You say they hypnotize the world. You compare them to Nazis." He pointed at the screens, showing her tweets. "That's not criticism of Israeli policy. That's Jew hatred. And your own party knows it. That's why they condemned you twice." Trump pulled out her voting record, noting, "You voted against Iron Dome funding. That's the system that protects Israeli civilians from Hamas rockets. You voted no on defending civilians from terrorists." He showed her lone no vote on several Israel-related bills. You support BDS boycott, divest, sanction targeting the only democracy in the Middle East. You side with Hamas and Hezbollah over Israel. You're the most anti-Semitic member of Congress, and your own Democrats have condemned you for it twice. His final line was devastating. Jews came to America seeking refuge from hatred, just like you did. And you brought the hatred with you. You spread anti-Semitism while America protects you. That's not just wrong. That's evil. Trump grabbed another folder marked Campaign Finance. Let's talk about money. Specifically, campaign money you paid to your husband's company. Paying your husband millions in campaign cash while having an affair with him? That's corruption. He asked, "You married Tim Minette, correct?" Omar nodded wearily. "His company is E Street Group, a consulting firm, correct?" She replied, "Yes." Trump continued, "And since 2018, Your campaign has paid his company approximately $2.8 million. Is that accurate? Omar tried to explain that these were campaign expenditures for legitimate services, but Trump cut in $2.8 million to your husband's company. Let me break that down. Trump displayed the payments on screen. E Street Group payments from Omar campaign. Travel, $780,000. Consulting, $1,200,000. Media production, $650,000. Digital services, $370,000. Total, $2,800,000. But then, Trump added with a knowing smile, here's where it gets interesting. He pulled out court documents. Before Tim Minette was your husband, he was married to Beth Minette. And when she filed for divorce in August 2019, do you know what she said? He displayed the divorce filing on screen, highlighting a specific section. Defendant's more recent travel and long work hours now appeared to be more related to his affair with Representative Ilhan Omar. Trump read it aloud, slowly. His ex-wife said you were having an affair with him while he was married? While you were married to someone else? While he was working for your campaign, getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars? The audience booed loudly. So let me get this timeline straight, Trump continued, pulling out a detailed chart. 2018. Tim Minette starts working for your campaign. You're married to Ahmed Hirsi at this time. 2019. You start an affair with Tim, while both of you are married to other people. 2019. Your campaign is paying Tim's company hundreds of thousands. 2019. Tim's wife files for divorce, citing your affair. 2019. You divorce Hirsi. 2020. You marry Tim. 2020 to present. Your campaign continues paying his company. Now over $2.8 million total. Trump shook his head in exaggerated disbelief. That's not campaign finance. That's a family business funded by political donors. You're funneling campaign money to your husband's company. He pulled out the Minnesota fine documentation again, and the Minnesota Campaign Finance Board fined you $3,469 for violations. The largest fine ever levied against a House member at that time for campaign finance violations. Omar tried to defend the fine as being for technical issues. Technical? Trump mocked. You paid your boyfriend's company hundreds of thousands while having an affair with him. Then you married him and kept paying him. There's nothing technical about that. That's corruption. Trump pulled out FEC complaints. Multiple Federal Election Commission complaints have been filed against you, alleging personal use of campaign funds, alleging you're enriching your family. And the evidence is right here. He pointed at the payment records on screen. $2.8 million to your husband's company. That's not services. That's not consulting. That's transferring campaign donations to your household income. His final line was delivered with contempt. You came to America with nothing. Now you're worth millions. How? By funneling campaign money to your husband. That's not public service. That's theft from donors. Trump pulled out video footage with visible anticipation. Now let's talk about loyalty. Specifically, your loyalty, or lack thereof. He queued up video on the screens. When you tell Somalis in Somalia to ask you what country you're from, the answer better be America. This is August 2022. You're in Somalia, Mogadishu, speaking to a large crowd in Somali. Let me play it with translation. The video played Omar addressing Somali crowds, speaking passionately in Somali, with the translation appearing on screen. Ask us what country we are from. Ask us what representation means to us. Trump paused the video. Ask us what country we are from. Not, I'm American. Not, I represent America in Congress. But, ask us what country we're from. He turned to her. So, I'm asking, what country are you from? Omar bristled. I'm an American citizen, representing, but Trump interrupted. Then why didn't you just say that? Why did you tell Somalis to ask you? What's the answer supposed to be? He didn't wait for her response. Let me show you more from that speech. More video played with Omar discussing Somali interests, Somali politics, and Somali needs, all in Somali to Somali crowds. You're in Somalia, promoting Somalia's interests, speaking Somali to Somalis, acting as Somalia's representative, not Minnesota's, not America's, Somalia's. Trump pulled out the oath of office. When you were sworn into Congress, you took an oath. Let me read it to you. He read slowly. I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. He looked up at her. Allegiance to the United States, not to Somalia, to America. Trump walked toward her podium. But in Somalia, you can't clearly say you're American. You promote their interests. You act as their representative. He pulled out more evidence. You've opposed American foreign policy repeatedly. You side with countries that oppose us. You vote against American interests. You minimize American tragedies. You spread hatred of American allies. He listed them. 9 over 11. Some people did something. Israel, constant attacks, anti-Semitism, immigration, oppose all enforcement, national security, vote against defense measures. Somalia speech, can't say you're American. Trump's voice rose. Where is your loyalty? You took an oath to America, but you act like you represent Somalia. His final line was delivered with force. America saved you from Somalia, gave you everything Somalia couldn't. And you go back there and won't even clearly say you're American. Maybe you're in the wrong country. Maybe you should represent Somalia there instead of representing Somalia here. Trump grabbed his final prepared folder before the climax. One more thing. Your disturbing habit of downplaying terrorism. He pulled up interview footage, air quotes for terrorists who killed Americans. That's disqualifying. This is you in an interview. The professor is discussing his class, mentions Al-Qaeda and Hezbollah. Watch what you do. The video played as the professor said Al-Qaeda and Hezbollah. Omar made exaggerated air quotes with her fingers, a mocking expression on her face. Trump replayed it 3 times. You made air quotes about Al-Qaeda, about Hezbollah, like they're not really terrorist groups. Like it's a joke. He pulled out casualty numbers. Al-Qaeda, responsible for 9 over 11. 2,977 Americans murdered. The worst terrorist attack in American history. Hezbollah killed 241 U.S. Marines in Beirut in 1983. Bombed the Marine barracks. Americans sleeping, murdered by terrorists. Trump looked at her with disgust. And you make air quotes. You mock calling them terrorists. He pulled out more evidence. This fits a pattern. You minimize 9 over 11. You make air quotes about terrorists. You oppose anti-terrorism measures. You seem sympathetic to America's enemies. He listed examples. Voted against designating the Muslim Brotherhood as terrorists. Opposed sanctions on terrorism-supporting countries. Defended Taliban and other groups. Made excuses for Islamic extremism. Constantly oppose American counterterrorism. Trump's voice became harder. You took an oath to defend America against enemies, but you can't even simply state that Al-Qaeda is a terrorist organization without air quotes and mockery. He looked at the cameras. For someone in Congress responsible for American security, this is disqualifying. You minimize terrorism. You mock designating terrorists. You oppose fighting them. His final line was simple but devastating. Whose side are you on? Trump stood and walked to center stage, leaving all his folders of evidence behind as physical proof of everything he'd presented. Ilhan, let me summarize what we've established tonight, because I think America needs to understand who you really are. He began his comprehensive indictment. You came to America in 1995 as a refugee from Somalia. Your country was in chaos, civil war, violence, starvation. America gave you safety when Somalia couldn't protect you. He paused. Then you possibly married your brother to commit immigration fraud. Marriage certificate. Family photos showing you as children together. School records listing the same parents. Social media posts calling him your brother. Tax fraud filing with 2 different men. Minnesota fine you paid. And you refuse to deny it. You won't say he's not your brother because you can't. Trump's voice rose. You minimized 9/11. The worst attack on American soil, as some people did something. 2,977 Americans murdered in my city, and you can't properly honor them. You trivialize their deaths to make a political point. That's not cultural sensitivity. That's contempt for America. He continued building his case. You spread anti-Semitic tropes. So disgusting your own party condemned you twice. Benjamins. Hypnotize the world. Comparing Jews to Nazis. Your own Democrats were so embarrassed they passed resolutions against you twice. That's how bad your Jew hatred is. Trump paced across the stage. You funneled $2.8 million in campaign money to your husband's company, had an affair with him while both married to others, got fined the largest amount ever for a House member. Pure corruption. Using donor money to enrich your family. He pointed at her. You went to Somalia and told crowds to ask you what country you're from. You promoted Somalia's interests. You couldn't clearly state you're American. You act as Somalia's representative in the U.S. Congress. You seem confused about which country you actually represent. Trump's voice became harder. You made air quotes about Al-Qaeda. You minimize terrorism. You oppose counterterrorism measures. You vote against American interests repeatedly. You side with America's enemies. He walked toward her podium for his final statement. America gave you everything. Safety from Somalia's chaos, citizenship, opportunity, education, the right to vote, the ability to run for office. You became a United States Congresswoman. His voice rose to a shout. And how did you repay America? By possibly committing immigration fraud? By attacking it? By spreading anti-Semitism? By minimizing 9/11? By funneling campaign money to your husband? By acting as Somalia's representative? By sympathizing with terrorists? Trump spread his arms to encompass the audience and cameras. You took an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, to bear true faith and allegiance to America. He pointed directly at her. But you've broken that oath. You've betrayed it. You've shown more loyalty to Somalia than to America, more sympathy for terrorists than for victims, more hatred for Jews than respect for allies, more interest in enriching yourself than serving constituents. His final line was delivered with maximum force. America saved you from Somalia, and you've spent your time in Congress attacking America, undermining America, and promoting Somalia. That's not representation. That's betrayal. Maybe Somalia needs you more than America does. The audience erupted into the longest standing ovation of the night. Over 5 minutes of USA, USA, mixed with calls to deport and investigate Omar. The chanting was deafening. Omar sat at her podium, visibly shaken, unable to mount an effective defense. Every point Trump made was backed by evidence she couldn't deny. Marriage records, photos, school documents, congressional resolutions, campaign finance records. video footage. She tried the Islamophobia defense, but it fell flat against documented evidence and her own recorded words. She could only sit there as her pattern of fraud, corruption, and anti-American behavior was exposed with receipts. The video exploded across every platform with unprecedented velocity. Within 2 hours, it had garnered 34 million views. Within 24 hours, that number swelled to 112 million. Within 1 week, it reached 182 million total views, making it one of the most watched political confrontations ever. Did she marry her brother? Became the #1 trending topic globally within minutes, and stayed there for 6 straight days. Some people did, something resurfaced and trended alongside it. Ilhan Omar immigration fraud trended. Omar anti-Semitism trended. 2.8 million husband trended. Somalia first trended. Every scandal Trump had exposed became a separate trending topic. Conservative media went into overdrive. Fox News played the full debate 5 times in 48 hours. Sean Hannity dedicated an entire week to segments on each of Omar's scandals, bringing in immigration attorneys to explain the brother marriage fraud, former FBI agents to discuss why it wasn't investigated, and Minneapolis residents who had reported the allegations years ago. Tucker Carlson did a special titled Immigration Fraud in Congress, the Omar Cover-Up, that became his most watched episode ever. Laura Ingraham brought on the photographer who documented Omar's staged crying photo at the concentration camp fence. But the real story was what happened in the mainstream media. Even outlets that had protected Omar for years couldn't completely ignore the evidence Trump had presented. CNN was forced to address the brother marriage allegations seriously for the first time, bringing on legal experts who acknowledged the evidence was concerning and deserved investigation. MSNBC's panel, while trying to defend Omar, had to admit the school records and family photos were difficult to explain. The New York Times, which had dismissed the allegations as conspiracy theories for years, ran a piece titled, "Omar Faces Renewed Questions About Past Marriages," which, while sympathetic, had to acknowledge the evidence existed and remained unexplained. The Washington Post fact-checked Trump's claims and awkwardly rated several as unproven but based on documented evidence, because they couldn't verify the brother relationship but couldn't deny the suspicious documentation. Polling showed dramatic shifts. When asked, should Ilhan Omar be investigated for immigration fraud? Before the debate, 41% said yes. After the debate, 73% said yes. When asked, did Omar's "some people did something" comment about 9/11 show disrespect? Before the debate, 52% said yes. After, 81% said yes. When asked, is Omar's loyalty to America questionable? Before the debate, 39% of all voters said yes. After, 68% said yes. The FBI faced renewed pressure. Republican congressmen demanded investigations into the marriage fraud allegations, citing the evidence Trump had displayed. Several called for her security clearance to be revoked, pending investigation. State attorneys general in Republican states announced they were reviewing whether state charges could be brought. Jewish organizations that had been criticized for being too tolerant of Omar's anti-Semitism became more vocal. The Anti-Defamation League, which had tried to give her the benefit of the doubt, issued a statement saying her tweets were clearly anti-Semitic and the House condemnations were warranted. Holocaust survivors groups condemned her. Some people did something comment as minimizing genocide. Muslim Americans were divided. Many condemned Omar, saying she didn't represent them and embarrassed the community. Other Muslim members of Congress distanced themselves from her. Some defended her, but polling showed that even among Muslim Americans, her approval dropped significantly after the debate. Minnesota politics exploded. A moderate Democrat announced a primary challenge within 72 hours of the debate, launching with clips of Trump's questioning. "Our district deserves representation that puts America first, not Somalia first," his announcement video stated. In his first week, he fundraised $4.2 million. Polling showed him immediately competitive, with Omar's support in her own district dropping below 50%. Democratic leadership abandoned her more openly than ever before. Nancy Pelosi, when asked about the debate, said members are responsible for addressing concerns about their conduct and refused to defend her. Chuck Schumer said Democrats needed to focus on representing American interests, a clear shot at the Somalia speech. Other Democrats who had worked with Omar began openly criticizing her. 3 months after the debate, the House Ethics Committee announced a formal investigation into Omar's campaign finance violations, specifically the payments to her husband's company. The FBI, under pressure from Congress and the evidence Trump had publicized, reopened inquiries into the marriage fraud allegations. Minnesota authorities announced reviews of her tax filings. 6 months after the debate, Omar announced she would not seek re-election to Congress, instead focusing on advocacy work. Political analysts universally recognized this as a forced retirement. She couldn't survive a primary after Trump's exposure, and continuing faced ethics investigations, possible FBI charges, and a complete loss of credibility. Trump himself experienced a surge in support from voters who appreciated him asking questions the media wouldn't. His approval among voters concerned about immigration rose to 61%. His willingness to confront Omar directly with evidence on issues others were afraid to touch made him appear courageous rather than bigoted, because he had used documents, not insults. 1 year after the debate, Ilhan Omar had effectively disappeared from national politics. The woman who had been a squad superstar and a progressive icon was now remembered primarily for the scandals Trump had exposed: possible brother marriage fraud, 9/11 minimization, condemned anti-Semitism, campaign finance corruption, and questionable loyalty to America. This wasn't a debate about policy or ideology. This was a confrontation between evidence and victimhood, between documentation and deflection, between someone who had enforced immigration law and someone accused of violating it. For years, Ilhan Omar had used identity as a shield. Any question about her marriages was Islamophobia. Any criticism of her 9/11 comments was racism. Any concern about her loyalty was bigotry. The strategy worked because media and politicians were afraid to be called bigots, so they didn't ask hard questions or demand answers. Trump didn't care. He brought marriage certificates, school records, family photos, congressional resolutions, campaign finance reports, and video footage evidence she couldn't dismiss as racism, documents she couldn't explain away, her own recorded words she couldn't deny. The brother marriage allegations, supported by school records showing the same parents and family photos showing them as children together, forced America to confront what had been dismissed as conspiracy theory. When she refused to simply deny he was her brother, when she wouldn't explain the documentation, the evidence spoke for itself. Her "some people did something" comment about 9/11, played in full context, showed exactly the contempt. Trump accused her of minimizing the worst attack on American soil to make a political point about Muslim civil rights. No amount of claiming misunderstanding could erase those words or her refusal to apologize. Her anti-Semitism, condemned twice by her own party in official House resolutions, couldn't be spun as mere criticism of Israel when the tweets themselves, Benjamin's, hypnotized the world, were classic anti-Semitic tropes that even Democrats had to condemn. The $2.8 million to her husband's company, documented in campaign finance reports, showed corruption regardless of whether the services were technically legal. She was enriching her family with donor money. Her Somalia speech, telling a Somali audience to ask what country we're from, instead of stating she was American, raised questions about loyalty that identity politics couldn't answer. Trump proved that evidence defeats victimhood, that documentation beats deflection, and that when you actually present facts, marriage records, congressional resolutions, campaign finance reports, video footage, the Islamophobia shield shatters.